Hi, welcome back to the CAD series from Bexhill West. So today's video is going to look at angles, and in doing so we're going to look at this tool. Now this is a very simple tool that I must admit I've only ever used once in my life, so it's a pretty useless tool. However, on the one occasion I needed to use it, it was really useful. So I'll show you briefly how it works, and it's not rocket science. And I thought it would be quite a good example to use for practicing some drawing skills, and then maybe at the end of it you might like to have a go at creating one of your own. So the tool itself is very simple. You simply roll it along, pinch it between your fingers and read off a linear measurement around the outside of the circumference of the disc. Now obviously this is probably less accurate and less useful than a straightforward ruler or tape measure, but it's quite useful in occasions where you've got to come around an irregular object to get a reasonably accurate measurement. In fact, it was when I needed to do such a thing for a steel fabrication project, that's when I came up with the idea. Although I suspect the idea is not original, it's probably been around a long time. In fact, thinking about it, it's exactly the same as those surveyor's wheels you see the council using when they're measuring the roads. However, as an example, as I say, for sort of developing a new skill, it's quite useful. So that will be the basis of today's video, and I hope you find the skills that we cover useful. Okay, so let's begin by drawing the circle which will form our rotary tool. Now in this case we're going to make it 300 millimeters sort of circumference. So what we need to do is work out the radius of that. So to begin with, we could use some maths, or we could use Google. Okay, so this will give us a simple calculator. We want to know the radius. No, we don't. We want, that's it. So we're going to calculate the radius. We know the circumference. So the circumference is 300 millimeters. This could be anything we like, but in this example, it's 300 millimeters. So that gives us a radius of 47.75. So let's come back into LibreCAD and draw a circle. Now there are lots of options for drawing circles here, so we'll just very quickly look at just two of them because we're going to deal with the other three in probably our next episode. So the first circle tool we could look at is this one here, and if I hover over it, it says center and point. If I select that, we can left click to drop the center of our circle and right click to draw the radius. Now that's okay. That's all right, but it's not very accurate. We don't know exactly what that circumference is, that radius is, and so the circumference is going to be beyond us. So what we're going to do is have a look at this one here, which is center and radius. So in this case, we can click to select that, and in the top of the box here, we could type in the radius we're after. And I've already pre-filled this in, but we could change that to whatever we like. But for this case, we want a circumference of 300 millimeters, so that will do. And then what I'm going to do is just turn on the grid tool, and I'm going to drop that circle, and I'm just going to drop it where these two hatched lines meet. It could go anywhere, but that will do. Okay, that's fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is draw a couple more circles, and these can be a little bit more random. So I shall use this circle tool here, the center and point tool, and I'm just going to draw in a couple of lines. In fact, I'll just do one line for the minute. And now I'm going to draw a vertical line up through here. So I can probably just do it with the 2-point line tool, this one here. So I can select here as my start point, left click to start the line, and just randomly anywhere up here, left click to drop it. So let's put that line in. But that line's actually a bit too long. I want to trim that to that outer circumference. So we can use our trim tool that we've used many times before. Select this as our limiting entity, and remember it tells us down at the bottom of the screen what we need to do. So we select the limiting entity there, and then select the entity to trim, which will be that one. Okay, so that's all looking pretty good. Now the next process is quite simple, but we're going to do a couple of different ways. So I'm going to select that little line we've got there, and if I come across to the modify menu and choose the rotate tool, I have to specify the rotation center, and because we centered this up on this sort of crosshair here, that's going to be very easy for me to do. So I can left click to specify the center. And again, it asks me down the bottom here what to do next. Specify the reference point. Well, we're going to use the center as our reference point. And it gives us this familiar box that you may remember from our last episode when we were looking at the move tool. So in this case, we're going to have multiple copies. And because there are 300 millimeters in our circle, we want 300 divisions. We've already got one mark, so let's type in 299, and I know that 360 divided by, or 360 degrees divided by 300 divisions will give us an angle here of 1.2 degrees. We'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. So let's click OK, and there we go. If I zoom in, we've got 300 divisions marked around our circle, and that's pretty good. But I think there might be a way in which we can improve this. So let's have a look at that. Now we're back in looking at our drawing, and I've just hit the undo button to undo that last command to leave us with our single vertical line just here. And this time I'm going to rotate that line again. So I'm going to select it, come across to the left, use the same rotate tool. I'm going to specify the rotation center as requested at the bottom of the screen, and it now asks me to specify the reference point once again, so that will be the same, and we'll get this familiar pop-up box again. This time we're going to make 9 copies with an angle of 1.2 degrees between them. Hit OK, and now we've got just a small section of our overall scale. What I'm going to do is come back to this circle tool again and pop a second circle in, and I'm just doing this. This is the 2-point circle. This doesn't need to be measured particularly accurately. I'm just relying upon the grid. So I'm going to snap to the grid there, and there's our circle. So what we could do now, let's sort of zoom in here and have a closer look at this. What I'm going to do is trim some of these intermediate lines so that they form sort of shorter divisions between if this was 0 and we were working round to 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 and so on, I just want to make some of these little marks a bit shorter. So I'm going to choose the trim tool, and it asks me to select a limiting entity, which we will make this one here. And then it asks me to select an entity to trim. So I'm going to select that one and just work along this line. Okay, that's pretty good. What I could do now, I don't think I need this circle here anymore, so I can delete it. In fact, no, I won't. I'll keep it in just for the moment. And let's zoom back out and have a look and see where we're at. So that's all looking pretty good. I can now select those items, come back to my rotate tool, and ask me to specify rotation center. So I can do that again, and the reference point, which again will be on the center. And now what I want to do is make 29 copies of this that will run around to complete the full circle. So I type 29, and this time we'll have an angle of 12 degrees because we're moving kind of 10 steps at once. Hit OK, and there we go. There's our scale. So our scale, let's imagine that the top here will be the 0. We'll go 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and so on in millimetres all the way around till we get to 280, 290, and then 0 and 300 will be on the same line. So is there anything else we could do to further enhance this? Well, yes, it would be quite nice to have numbers on here corresponding with the measurements that we've sort of delineated around the perimeter of this thing. So for that we can use the text tool. So it's this big capital A over here. I'm going to select that, and I've got some text pre-entered here, 0 to 300 millimeters. I've chosen a height of 2 millimeters, and I've chosen the ISO font. Of course, we could change all of that and make that whatever we fancied. And we could specify an angle here, but I'm not going to do it just now. I'm going to hit OK, and it'll ask me to specify an insertion point. Well, it could be anywhere, but just for now, I'm going to drop it just here. Okay, so that's got our first bit of text in. Now, what we're going to do is look at another tool here, which is this one here. If I hover over it, it's called Move and Rotate. So I'm going to select this one and now experiment a little bit with it and see if I can align this with exactly where I need it to be. So it says select to move and rotate, so I need to select that first. Now hit the Move Rotate tool. This says specify a reference point. So again, we might as well use the center just here. And it says specify a target. Now if I move my mouse, we can see it moves around. So let's just pop it here for the minute. And it asks us to put an angle in. So in this case, I'm going to put an angle of 0. And that's just moved it up there, and it's as it was, it's just moved location. So let's select that once again, use that tool once more, I'm going to specify a reference point which will be here, and the target point can be the same, and this time let's put an angle in of 90, and there we go, that's now aligned that vertically upwards. Now it's not quite where I would like it to be, so what I can do is select here, I can use that Move Rotate tool again, and if you remember, I've still got the grid switched on, so in this case I could turn the grid off and specify my reference point, which will be there, and now I can move this about. Let's try it just there, put the angle of 90 in again. Oops, I've flipped it around by 90 degrees, so let's undo that. In fact, let's just do a straightforward move this time. So let's select the item, move, reference point could be here, and then we'll move that to there. Okay, I want to delete the original, hit OK, and there we have it. We've got our scale in the right place. And we can just repeat this now, and we can work around all of these divisions until we get everything just how we want it. So let's have a go at doing just that. So let's look at adding some more text to this drawing. And when entering text, it's worth bearing in mind a few things. So an angle of 0 degrees would be effectively like this horizontal line across the page, moving from the left to the right. So if this was our sort of origin, if you like, 0 degrees would be here. And then it would go around 10, 20, 30, 40 and so on. Which is why this went in at 90 degrees. So this is 90 degrees. 180 degrees would be coming back this way, and 270 would be downwards. So let's enter a piece of text in for just here. So this line here would represent 290 millimeters. And we know that that angle between there and there is 12 degrees. So that would be at an angle of 90 degrees minus 12. So let's see how that's done. So again, I'll come here to my text tool and I'll select it. I'll put my text in, which will be 290. I'll leave the millimeters off. And we'll put an angle in of 78 degrees. And hit OK. Now my mouse, if I turn the grid off and specify an insertion point, let's go for somewhere like that. There we go, there's our 290 degrees, and it's slightly out of place, but it's in the right angle, so we can change that. Reposition it as we wish. So let's just do a couple more. I won't do all of these on here for now because the video would be ridiculously long, but let's just try a couple more. Let's do 280, and in this case it will be 78. The angle will be 78 minus 12, which of course will be 66, and we can drop that in there, and again it's slightly off, but you get the idea. And we can keep going. So the next one will be 270, and we'll have an angle of, this time it will be 66 minus 12, which 54. So I had to think for a moment then. It's not exactly tricky maths, and let's drop that one in, and so on and so forth, and we can work around. 54 minus 12 will be 42. We can pop that in. Next one will be 250, be 42 minus 12, 30. We can pop that in there. Let's just finish off this last couple here. So 250. Next one will be 240, it will be an angle of 30 minus 12, which will be 18. Let's pop that one there, and we'll just do one more, which will be 230. 18 minus 12 is 6. And there we go, and we can continue working all the way around until we've completed the scale. And perhaps that's something I'll have a go at in just a moment. So does this tool have any practical application whatsoever? Well, I first came up with this idea, and it may not have been an original idea, but several years ago I needed to measure an irregularly shaped object, and I needed the measurement to be reasonably accurate, and this tool did the job for me, or a variation of it. And I was thinking about this the other day when I was thinking about spacing out the stalls for the point rodding on the Bexhill West project. Now these stalls need to be at a scale distance of 24 feet, which at 4mm to the foot, at 6 feet, and which at 4mm to the foot is a spacing of 24mm. So we could use this to set these out. So for example, let's just zoom in a little bit. Now this would be better if I'd finished the scale off and put all of the measurements on, but not to worry, for now this will do. So this is our 0 reference, this will be 10, this will be 20. So if I count along, it's 21, 22, 23, 24. So I've selected the 24mm line. If I come over here to the left-hand modify menu, there's a control to lengthen. So I'm going to hit lengthen. It's got a length of 12 in there from when I last did this, so I shall keep that the same. We could change that to whatever we want it to be. And then down the bottom here it asks me to select the entity to trim or enter distance. Well, we've got a distance entered in, so I'm just going to select that once again, and that extends that line for me. So I could do the same at say 48. So we've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 48 will be this line here, and lengthen. Let's keep that length the same, and we can extend it, and so on. So I could work all the way around here and create an additional scale, and I could, for example, insert a little icon here for a point rodding stall, and that might be useful. We could do the same for anything, telegraph poles or anything else that we want spacing out at a regular distance. Now, I totally accept that doing this way is of no great advantage over just using a straightforward ruler. But I just wanted to use it as an example to show how we could create something useful and deal with angles. And it kind of builds on what we looked at in the last episode of repeating patterns, in that it's a similar thing. So if you recall, we haven't really drawn very many lines here. We've drawn 3 circles, only one of which was accurate, the outer radius of 47.75 or whatever it was. We've drawn 2 inner circles which were sort of just drawn randomly to the grid, and then we've used the rotate tool just to copy our first line around which we've trimmed. So now's perhaps a good time we could maybe delete some of these other lines, and there you go, a rotary scale tool, useful for maybe not very much, but you never know, if you want to lay out a clock face or something like that, you can use this this process. Now of course I've made this to with a circumference of 300 millimeters. We could do exactly the same thing working in inches. It doesn't need to be 300 millimeters, it could be a different size and what have you. But it's just a thought, a good sort of example of using angles with the rotate tool, and I'd be interested to see what any of you could do with this idea. So there you go, a probably pretty useless tool for most of the people watching the video. However, there's some useful skills in there that we looked at, so I hope that's of interest to some of you. Now the drawing that I've created in this video I'm going to upload to the Facebook group, and that's not really got going yet, but it's quite a healthy number of people on there already. So if you are one of those who's following along, feel free to sign up to the group, download the drawing, have a look at it, have a play with it. And here's a bit of homework really for all of those of you who are keen and following along. And the challenge is quite simple. Have a go with this and see if you can create a rotary ruler, rotary scale, I don't even know what this thing is called, of your own. Maybe instead of having millimeter measurements, you might come up with one in inches. Maybe you'll come up with one in scale feet, depending on the scale that your model making is to. I mean, it would be quite useful to have one that was 4 millimeters to the foot, or 2 millimeters, or whatever scale you're using. And then if you come up with something, I challenge you to upload it into the file section of the Facebook group for us all to have a look at and see how well you've done. Anyway, that's all from me for now. Thanks for watching everyone. Bye bye.